What is up? We are here, 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell along my co-host Glenn Martin to talk about an interesting question that we've seen around, and actually one that my co-host was astute enough to consider when all the talk of Orlando Brown Jr. being traded was coming up. So we're going to get into whether or not we think Orlando Brown Jr.'s replacement is already on the roster. But before we get into it, and what our thoughts are and who that guy might be, take a second, hit the subscribe button. Make sure, as always, at the end of the video, leave your comments. Do like Lamar Jackson says and hit the subscribe button. And but let's get rolling here. So, Glenn, everyone knows that whether it's this year or next year, the end of Orlando Brown Jr. in Baltimore is inevitable. He's definitely not going to be a lifer. He wants to play left tackle. So whether it's this year or next year, he's gone. But we're going to act on the assumption that he gets moved.
Yeah.
So if he gets moved, do you believe, because everyone talks about us getting a tackle early in the draft. In fact, I obviously talked about Tevin Jenkins. And part of the reason was
and
Orlando
Christensen
Brown.
Later on.
And Brady Christensen, exactly. But do you believe that it's possible that there is a replacement for him on the roster? And if so, who would it be?
Well,
before you answer, shout out to Gareth M. Cross, our new patron. Sorry, Glenn. I just wanted to get that in. Also, Northern Ireland. We love that you guys from all over the world are enjoying the content that we put out and the shows and things. So shout out. Sorry, Glenn. I totally. No,
that is so. The fact that I never thought I would ever meet someone or even be able to speak or converse anything with someone from Northern Ireland. That is so cool. Yeah. And I'm still hopeful one day I can take a vacation to Ireland because I hear it's beautiful. So, but yeah, get into this. There's really only one guy on the roster that could even possibly fill in that role, and that is, of course, Tyree Phillips, who was drafted by the Ravens last season and saw split time at guard and tackle in a kind of a timeshare role with DJ Fluker after Orlando moved to left following the Ronnie Stanley injury. And, I'll say this. When he started the season at right guard, he had some really nice games at right guard. I think the Philadelphia game was probably his best game where he really showed out as a pass blocker and really developed all year as a run blocker. I think just, kept improving, but had definitely his best pass blocking day against Philly. And then even against Pittsburgh, he had some snaps and played pretty well 2 weeks later in week 8. But man, he really had some tough times too as well, Jimbo. I mean, even in a timeshare role where they were really obviously putting him in positions to succeed, when you consider him and Fluker were going in and out depending on the formation and the play calling, and still had struggles, even in a position where they thought he can handle this, he can do this. They put Tyree in there, and he really struggled. I mean, he ended the season with just a 42 run block grade, according to PFF, and a 56 pass block grade. Now, I will say this in his favor. His best pass blocking right tackle performance did come in the final game against Cincinnati. Now, you could say that, well, that's great. I mean, that shows that he was getting better throughout the year and that he peaked at the right time and hopefully. But you could also say, well, it was Cincy. It was Cincy that was depleted at that point. Carlos Dunlap had gone. Gino was out. DJ Reader was out. And, while those are interior guys, but still you understand my point that there wasn't a ton of talent going up against him at that point. So, it's hard to say, but I will say this in his favor. He's 6'5", he's 345 pounds, and he's got one of the longest reaches in the entire league, second only to maybe Orlando Brown and maybe one other guy around the league. So he's, from a physical tool standpoint, he looks the part. And actually, he excels in certain areas that are weighed heavily by analysts, and length is being a big one as far as if you want to play tackle in the league. So he's got some ability. He's raw. I mean, he's extremely raw. A guy hasn't played a ton at that, but even in college and before. So he's definitely raw. And so you see that there could be hope. Like, there's only a going up from here. I mean, but at the same time, can you count on that, Jimmy? So that's what I want to. And I know you might be a little more hopeful than some fans, because some fans are done with him. But although I will say I did see some fans that are saying, hey, don't forget about Tyree Phillips. When you consider, Jimmy, the offseason was so cut short, and hopefully this season they have a little bit more, although some of the offseason's already being cut, being the OTAs already being nixed this year. But they're obviously going to have more off-season time this year than last. They're going to expect right now to still have the 3 preseason games. So what are your – do you think the Ravens can count on him at all, or do you think that they have to address the right tackle position either in free agency or the draft?
Yeah, this is a really tricky one because we're in win now mode. We know that. And so if Orlando does get moved, there's a couple things that make me want to say we can rely on him now. One, the classic, everyone talks about this, you're going from year 1 to year 2. And so that being said, he's going to get better. Like you said, I don't think he can get worse. He can only get better. So that's one. 2, he was dinged up a lot of last year. So if he's just healthy, that already is a big step in the right direction. Another piece of it is the acquisition of Kevin Zeitler. I think Kevin Zeitler helps him, just like Orlando was helped by Marshall when he was young in his. Orlando's still young in his career, but his rookie year. And sharing his time with when his time overlapped with Marshall. So I have hope that we can rely on him. And the other things are the stuff that's uncoachable: length, athleticism, instincts, mobility. I think that overall, this kid who had played 1 year of high school football, then went to JUCO, then went on to D1, and is now, and so in think about this, Glenn, in basically 5 years of football, he became a 3rd round pick in the NFL. That's incredible, right? Like, or think about the benefit Orlando had of watching his dad his whole life.
Well, he was in the practice field, right? The Ravens practice field as a child.
Yeah, absolutely. Running around he's probably already big enough to get on the field, but yeah, I mean, goodness. So, but what I'm saying is that Orlando, there's so much left. There's so much runway left before his we really see what his ceiling is. That it's going to be so interesting to see what he does moving forward. So my answer to you is actually I am relatively hopeful. I thought about this for a while before I knew we were doing the show, and I would feel good if we got rid of Orlando, got compensation for him, and with the improvements at the other spots. If we improve at center, we already improved at right guard. We keep Bozeman, and then we have Ronnie. I feel like I would feel good about it moving forward. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think he can be relied on. I would be nervous, but I would be more optimistic than nervous.
Okay. Well, I do like that you pointed out the addition to Zeitler, and I don't think we can underestimate how much that helps. Yeah. When he's looking to his left and seeing Ben Powers, how much, warm
another
and
young guy.
Yeah. I mean, that guy's fighting for his job as well, and he might be looking to you for some answers.
Right.
Whereas
because
Zeitler,
Tyree beat him for the spot. It was only out of necessity that he went to tackle.
Exactly. So I think that Zeitler, being in there, there's no doubt the impact that he could have, the positive impact he can have on Tyree Phillips. But to me, if you just look at his performances, he definitely performed better as a guard than he did a tackle. So I don't think I don't think the Ravens could really count on him to be a starter, but you might be able to say, look, we can turn this guy into the swing tackle. We can turn this guy.
What does John say? What does he call it? There's guys that start and then there's starters.
Exactly. Yeah.
So maybe he ends up being one of those guys where
that's we got a first round started.
Yeah. Exactly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's possible he could start. If the draft doesn't fall their way and free agency, if they don't like what they see from the medicals from Mitchell Schwartz and who's the 5th round pick we had that went to the Green Bay, who was with Green Bay?
Wagner.
Yeah, if Ricky Wagner decides to hang him up and not come out, if we don't find an answer in the draft, Tevin Jenkins is gone, your guy Jimbo, and Brady Christensen is
Tyree's
gone.
Better than Brady Christensen.
Okay, all right. Well, if those guys, if they don't hit on him and they end up having to go into the season with him as the starter who hopes to become, an actual starter, I would be kind of nervous. I mean, unless they see a bunch in the offseason, I would be pretty nervous. Now, if they end up with a Mitchell Schwartz, or if they decide to hang on to Orlando Brown Jr. for one more season, and you tell me Tyree is your flex guy, then I'd be okay with it, because I think I like his versatility and that he can play pretty much everywhere other than center in a pinch. And especially if if Orlando Brown is forced to play some left tackle because Ronnie Stanley isn't fully recovered and they have to start the season that way, I'd be okay with him doing it in a limited basis. I think the more tape, if teams start to see a bunch of tape on, they could start to expose the guy, and that's what I don't want to see.
So
but
you'd be nervous. I mean, you don't think he would just win a matchup between Garrett Miles, or what's his name? Oh my gosh,
Myles Garrett
and Jadeveon Clowney? You're not confident
yeah,
in Tyree Phillips to stop one of those guys?
No, and TJ Watt, no, I don't think so. But I tell you, I appreciate you referencing his instincts because he certainly showed them off when he picked up that fumble and went rumbling and stumbling and trucking.
Hey, he was moving too. I think he hit like 16 miles an hour or something crazy like that.
Something crazy. Man. The big fella was moving. No,
Miles Jack will never forget that day.
That's right.
For the rest of it. That he will tell it to his grand. On this day, I thought I was gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I ran into a speeding train on this day. Yeah. So I mean, I think eventually it's definitely possible. He's a young guy, like you mentioned. He's raw, so it's possible he could develop himself into a pretty nice right tackle. There's no doubt. But as far as going into next season, I think anything beyond the swing tackle or that swing 6 extra, that's 6 linemen. I think anything beyond that to expect is a little optimistic for me.
Right. But let me tell you this, Glenn. So tell me what your thoughts are on this. I think that for any championship team, I might be painting with a broad stroke with any, but I feel pretty safe also saying any. There's got to be some surprise performers, right? You know what I mean? So every year, so I wonder if he can be, because we've got to have those guys if we want to contend, because no team is going to have a perfect roster, right?
No, you're right.
And so I think he could be one of those guys. I think obviously Duvernay, we're putting a lot of money on him being one of those guys as far as uptick in production. But I think Tyree, so there's, we liked him at right guard. They went and upgraded at right guard, but Tyree played well at right guard, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So to me, if they drafted him in the 3rd round, a lot of people obviously envision him moving into guard, but I don't think they'd spend a 3rd round pick on a guy that's just a guard. They don't envision having, at least a potential to play at right tackle. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm hopeful that he's one of those surprise guys. And this is the other thing. I think he's only survived in football thus far because he's shown that he can learn quickly and improve quickly. His acceleration of improvement must be good for this to be his 6th real year of organized
That's
football.
insane. I mean, when you think of it that way, that this is his 6th year playing football, is ridiculous because most of these guys have been doing it since they were in Pee Wee football, since they were 8 years old. That's how long they've been doing it, and doing it at the position, that they're now doing in the NFL. So it is really a credit to him. And
then think about how long they've been lifting, preparing their bodies. He's still doing all of that. You know what I mean? So I expect his improvement this year to be, maybe I'm overly optimistic, but as soon as you said it, I really started to stew on it. And I said, you know what? This kid has a shot. I think if they get rid of Orlando, it's his job for the taking, right?
Oh, if they draft a guy and then it's him, absolutely. I mean, he should feel like he's the leader in the clubhouse if Orlando is moved. I mean, he's the one who knows the offense. He's been here the entire year. So I would think he's excited. And I think you're right. There are those surprise players that just make such an impact that you don't see coming. I don't think anyone could have foreseen the Jacoby Jones impact.
Right.
I remember when he was let go, they had wanted nothing to do with him, the Texans, because he couldn't hang on to a punt. He couldn't catch a ball when he was running routes. He comes here. He's he's the all-pro returner and a guy that really, in my opinion, should have been the MVP of the Super Bowl. But that's for another day. But so I think you're right. I think I'm not going to say there's no chance. I think there's definitely a chance. And hopefully he took this off season. To get his body into better shape.
You see his workout videos?
No, I didn't. Did you?
Oh, he posted some workout videos.
I like hearing that. Okay, how's he looking?
He's looking good.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe he was standing next to Fluker and looking up and going, I gotta start looking more like that guy because oh my goodness, and getting off the bus, I want him getting off first. But yeah, so it's definitely possible. I don't think you can count on it, but I think you can count on him to be your 6th guy, your swing guy that can fill in and also become in for that extra lineman because the Ravens like to use that extra lineman to line up in the tight end spot. So yeah, I'm hopeful that he turns his body around. But we got to wait and see what he looks like in the mandatory mini camps. I want to see how he's running, if he passes the conditioning test day one. Yeah, let's check him out.
So this is the real question. So he had some hashtags at the bottom of his post, right? Okay. One of them is apparently referencing a nickname of his. If you had to guess, I'll give you one guess what it is.
His nickname?
Yeah. It's a pretty common nickname for big guys from the South.
Big guys from the South. Well, I would say Jelly, but we already got Jelly on the team.
I gave you one word in it, big.
I don't know. Tell me.
Big country, baby.
Oh, big country. Okay. All right. I guess I should have gotten
country. That. I was like, all right, the swagger. Here we go, Tyree. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, that's encouraging. I didn't even know about that. And hearing that he's posting work, that gets me excited, a little more excited, because I think if he can, get some of that grown man strength, knock off some of that baby fat, then you're talking about a different player. I mean, you pack a little more power in his punch and improve his footwork. I think I just want to see, see, when I hear stuff like this, Jimbo, it makes me a little bit less, thrilled to hear about the OTAs being canceled, because that's 10 less practices. That's 10 less 2-hour practices that a guy like that,
who has Tyree 6 years of football, right?
Exactly. I mean, every minute matters for him. So, I think players like Tyree Phillips are really going to be negatively impacted by this decision. But hopefully he can make up that ground when the mandatory practices start.
Yeah, can Danny Harp just get down there and get with Tyree already to just get him looking like Hulk when he comes back into training?
That's what I'm hoping for, man. Dude. My goodness, because I think he does have a chance. There's no doubt.
Yeah, so I think that's a great way to put it. I think that at this point I might be shading towards the optimistic side, but I feel like he could be one of those surprises that could come through this year and really show significant improvement year 1, year 2. And like John says, go from a guy that's starting to a starter.
Right.
So it will be interesting. And also maybe, whether or not they move Orlando doesn't just have to do with the deal. It has to do with their faith in Tyree.
Yeah.
So, and obviously
that would be, I wonder how much contact they can have before the draft. Because I think if they move Orlando, it's going to happen either in the draft or before.
Right.
So I guess we'll wait and see what happens. But let us know what you guys think. Is there a replacement currently on the roster? I mean, we really only talked about Tyree Phillips because the only other option would be like Andre Smith, or
bringing Fluker back. Oh yeah, on the roster. My bad.
Yeah, currently on the roster. He's really the only other option. But yeah, so let us know what you guys think. Do you think Tyree Phillips is, more of a guard? Do you think he's kind of maxed out, or you think his maximum potential is more of that 6 guy? Or do you think that he could turn himself into a heck of a right guard or right tackle, or maybe even left? I mean, who knows? But let us know what you guys think, and we'll talk.